It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Welcome to the mother of all talk shows, coming to you live from Minsk. Remember Minsk, the capital of Belarus. An armada of American warships is arriving off the coast of Venezuela, and connectivity is expected any moment. I'm here to tell you, Donald Trump, you are going to regret this very much indeed. And on this day, in 1854, lions were sent to their death by donkeys in the charge of the Light Brigade. It's not that I'm just saying, it's just that it might be about to happen again. And the Russians have unveiled the mother of all nuclear missiles, a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed cruise missile, which has already been dubbed by NATO chiefs in Brussels as SKYFALL, as indeed it might be, because it is completely undetectable, completely undefendable, and changes, just as the oreshnik did, changes the balance of power in Europe forever, or for at least a very, very long time. And the killing continues in Gaza, in Palestine, and in Lebanon. And maybe the war is about to begin again in Iran. There's plenty to talk about. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Well, into the Valley of Death, of course, rode the 600. They weren't supposed to be there. They weren't supposed to be riding into the Valley of Death, but the idiots who were commanding them ordered them to do so, and being gallant men, if misled by their officers, they nonetheless did their duty. They were duly massacred. And there are lots of people in the British High Command, political and even military, who really want revenge for that terrible day. In 1854, the Battle of Balaclava in the Crimean War is still very much on their minds, even though it's almost 200 years ago. In parenthesis, I have literally just seen Senator Ted Cruz say that China has been waging a millennial war against the United States of America, which puzzled me a little because I'm pretty sure that the United States has only been around for about a quarter of a millennium, though I'll grant you it seems like a very long time. But back to the Crimean War. I once had a conversation with little Benwallace. He used to talk to me in the corridors of power when he was the Minister of Defence, but he wouldn't face me in open debate, as many of you know, when he ran away from the Oxford Union. Literally ran away. He turned his ministerial car around and ran back to London because he realized it was me that he was going to face in a debate. He left a big Toby chum of his to face the music instead, and the resultant massacre was metaphorically almost as bloody as the charge of the Light Brigade. But in one of my conversations with Benwallace, he confided to me that his regiment had actually never really forgiven the Russians for the Battle of Balaclava, for the Crimean War. And he left me in little doubt that he saw the opportunity coming in the now war in the Ukraine for exacting some bizarre form of revenge the best part of 200 years later. Well, it's not really working out that way. The British keep on talking about mobilizing their non-existent forces. It's important for me to put this in perspective for you. There were more people at Old Trafford watching Manchester United this afternoon in their yesterday afternoon in their magnificent victory 4-2 against Brighton and Hove Albion. That's just en passant. We're fourth in the league, you know. Now, there were more people at that football game than are in the totality of the British Armed Forces. And a good number of the British Armed Forces are medics and hairdressers and cooks and sundry other ranks who certainly could not be counted amongst the gallant men of the charge of the Light Brigade. Our Light Brigade now is lighter than it has ever been. And so the idea that Britain is going to send forces into the Ukraine war, when Russia made it plain that any NATO forces arriving on the theater of conflict in Ukraine will immediately be destroyed. And destroyed they will. And who knows with what weapons. We are familiar now with the oreshnik, but now Russia today has just unveiled the mother of all weapons. It is a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed, undetectable, invisible to radar, undefendable cruise missile. But it takes cruise missiles into another dimension. There it is there, nicely painted in red. It is a game changer. And unveiling it today is clearly a response to the ongoing threats of the United States to send long-range Tomahawk missiles into the theater of war, weapons which can reach Russian cities deep into the interior. Russia's losing patience with that kind of threat, and this is evidently their response. Now, don't get me wrong, although I was a boy soldier, I abhor war, and I abhor civil wars even more than other kinds of wars. And that is essentially what the Ukraine conflict is or was, until NATO got involved and sought to weapon half of a civil war against the Russian Federation. Now, as you know, I'm sitting here in Minsk. That's where the two agreements were signed, which would have obviated the existence of what we now know as the special military operation, or as I call it, the Ukraine war, or as I call it, the NATO-Russia war, using Ukraine as a proxy. But whatever you call it, the Minsk agreements, if they had been implemented, would have ensured that there was no war at all. Just think about that. I'm in the city. In fact, I'm maybe 150 yards from the building in which the Minsk agreements 1 and 2 were reached. But it's clear and has been admitted by the two original guarantors of the Minsk agreements, Angela Merkel of Germany and François Hollande, then the President of France, that the Minsk agreements were never intended to be implemented. They were instead a means, they said this, not me, of Ukraine gaining time in which to build up its military resources, and of course, unsaid, for NATO to become more and more deeply involved. The Minsk agreement would have solved everything. It would have guaranteed the rights of the roughly 1/3 of the Ukrainian population then, who were Russian-speaking people, who were Russian people, who regarded themselves as Russian people, who were there because Ukraine and Russia used to be the same country, not just in the communist period of the Soviet Union, but in the Tsarist period of the Soviet Union. The Tsarist period predating the Soviet Union by hundreds of years. Ukraine and Russia were the same country. Indeed, the Empress of Russia used to sit, not in Moscow, not in St. Petersburg, but in Kiev, or Kiev, as some people prefer to call it. The fact that this conflict arose when the elected government of Ukraine was overthrown in a violent coup, literally organized to the nth degree by the United States of America and the European Union, is the root cause of this problem. The Minsk agreements could have negated previous sins, previous crimes, guaranteed the Russian-speaking people in Ukraine their rights, their language rights, their rights to govern their localities in the way that they pleased, their rights to look to Moscow rather than to Brussels, and that was all agreed in the Minsk agreements, guaranteed by Merkel and Hollande, by Germany and France, and adopted by the Security Council of the United Nations, giving it the force of international law and international agreement. But not only were the agreements never honored, they were never intended to be honored. And so I'm here, which is almost as sanctioned and quarantined as the Russian Federation itself, although the boomerang is just as evident here as it is in Moscow. You see, Minsk is not just one of the great European cities. It's not just one of the cleanest, loveliest, safest European cities. In fact, exponentially so, more clean, more safe, more beautiful than any other European capital that I have seen in recent years or decades, other than Moscow itself. And the shops are absolutely chock full, and the streets are chock full of people buying them. The Belarus economy has done exactly what the Russian economy has done. It has, first of all, fortified its own domestic production, its own agriculture, its own manufacturers, its own academic and business and industrial life, but it has found other markets. It has found other investors. Just a few miles from here, there's an absolutely booming car plant established by China with thousands of people working in it. 3 shifts, like the shifts I used to do in the Michelin tire plant. The mall that I attended today contained only Belarusian products, from refrigerators to televisions to clothing of the highest order and to furniture and all kinds of other goods, and all of them made here in Belarus, and all of them made here in Belarus because Western companies all pulled out as a result of sanctions, and those Western countries are now themselves toiling so badly, as most of you don't need me to tell you. Now, I wish the trade talks in South Korea between the Chinese and American delegations Godspeed. I hope that the summit meeting in South Korea between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping go very well. Who wants more tension in the world? Who wants more talk of war in the world? But when I see tedcruz claim live, I just watched it, that China has been planning war on the United States for 1,000 years, when the United States didn't exist until 1776, I am again persuaded that the United States is ruled by idiots. And because it's ruled by idiots, nothing can be ruled out, not even an American invasion of Venezuela. Now, I know Venezuela very well indeed. I know that there are millions of Venezuelans under arms just waiting for the Yankee invasion. I know there are many more millions throughout Latin America who will not remain idle if the North American giant, the United States of America, invades South America. It will become a Latin American war against the United States of America. There will be a lot of people who stream north as refugees, yes, but there will be millions who will flood into Venezuela from Brazil, from Colombia, from all parts of South America, and will be itching to get a shot at the poor, bloody infantry and American Marines who are about to be sent into an invasion as ill-judged as the American invasion of Vietnam was. Do I have to remind American viewers that the invasion of Vietnam cost 58,000 American dead, 58,000, and hundreds of thousands of wounded and maimed, and millions who never really recovered from the war that they were forced to fight in Vietnam. Muhammad Ali refused to fight in Vietnam because he wouldn't do the white man's bidding and kill brown people on behalf of the oligarchy in the United States. Donald Trump didn't fight either, of course, but then, poor thing, he suffered from bone spurs. So he doesn't know what it's like to be fighting an entire people. He doesn't know what it's like to invade a country and then face the wrath of millions of people in that country. You'd have to have been in Vietnam to know what that felt like, or at least you would have had to watch some of the Vietnam genre of movies, and rather more carefully than Donald Trump probably did. The truth is There are millions in Venezuela who will resist an American invasion. And yet an American invasion appears to be completely imminent. They've been exercising this weekend in Trinidad and Tobago, which is virtually a stone's throw from the coast of Venezuela. They've sent an entire battle group, aircraft carriers, bristling with American warplanes, and destroyers and battleships by the dozen. They are all gathered now on the coast of Venezuela. So it appears that Donald Trump is crazy enough to plan to invade a country which is not only bristling with its own citizens' defiance, but is a key ally of China, of Russia, and of Iran, as well as of Cuba, as well as of Nicaragua. The idea that this is going to be plain sailing for the United States of America is as foolish as that order in 1854 to the Light Brigade to charge on and on into the guns, to charge on and on into the valley of death. As my good friend Dixon said on here when he was standing in for me just recently, you see, in Venezuela, there are jungles, and there are mountains, and there are mountains with jungles. And in every one of them, behind every tree, will be a man and a woman with a gun just waiting for Uncle Sam. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. We have to rage against the dying of this light. Many of you, I know you're saying it already, there was never much light, that England was not the green and pleasant land you are making it out to be, and we never were free, and we never were a democratic country, and so on. Of course, I hear and recognize all of these points of view. But I grew up in what turned out to be a brief moment of social democracy in this country. It didn't go far enough, but it is an incomparable land to the land that we live in today, of brand new council houses, with your father working in a factory at the end of the road that the government had forced the company to redirect to, with a health center at the other end of the road where you got free milk, orange juice, malt, a free NHS if you were clever enough, free university, completely free, and an era of free speech. Of course, the television was owned by just a few oligarchs, and if you didn't cut the mustard with them, you would never be seen on television. But nobody would ever dream of telling you that you were under arrest because of a placard that you held up. Nobody would ever dream that 90-year-old ladies, that blind men in wheelchairs, that 80-year-olds in their scores, maybe hundreds, would end up on terrorism charges in Britain for expressing support on a piece of cardboard for an organization of peaceful, non-violent, civil disobedience people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, our poll this evening, will Netanyahu annex the West Bank? It's kind of otiose to me whether he annexes it or not. He's acting as if it is a part of Israel, and the Palestine Authority appears more than ready to accommodate that. But there are, of course, those in the Israeli Knesset, and they represent the majority of members of the Israeli Knesset, who want to formally as part of their Israel project, formally annex the West Bank. Why not? They got away with annexing East Jerusalem. They got away with annexing the Golan Heights. Why not go the whole hog? Will Netanyahu annex the West Bank? Yes or no? Simple question. You can answer it on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, and you should be following me on Telegram because who knows, that might be my last redoubt. You can vote on my X, you can vote on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, and if you're watching us on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and give a thumbs up to the mother of all talk shows. It helps with algorithm. And if you're in the vanguard, the creme de la creme, my original and even best supporters on my Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. You can vote there too. If you want to call the show, it's toll free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the international number is 0044 203 966 2625. Now, Britain has become an increasingly authoritarian, an increasingly tyrannical, and some say a proto-fascist state. It certainly felt that way to me and my wife when we were held by armed police for 4 hours in my case, 5 hours in her case, without telling me that she was being interrogated in the next room, and they took off their jackets to reveal their sidearms. It felt, well, not really British to me. I've got to be perfectly honest with you. Since then, my wife has found it difficult to sleep, found it difficult to eat, has lost several kilograms in weight, and she wasn't that weighty to begin with. It has been an incredibly distressing, traumatic time for us. But Sarah Wilkinson has suffered a witch hunt at the hands of the British state for her support for Palestine, which knocks ours into a cocked hat. This is a woman, and she is now by no means alone. Richard Medhurst, Craig Murray, Dr. Al Adwan, who we had on the show just a week ago, and 2 days later, she was handcuffed in her own home and is now effectively under house arrest, a concept hitherto unknown in the United Kingdom. 2,000 people, many of them in their 90s, 80s and 70s, and most of them old age pensioners, are awaiting trial on terrorism charges for holding up a cardboard placard with some words on it, but are charged under the Terrorism Act and potentially face prison up to 14 years in prison and branded forever, as me and Gayatri are now branded as people who are held at an airport under the Terrorism Act. It is a terrifying new Britain in which we now live. Virtually nobody, and I mean nobody, who is in any way engaged, whether just on Twitter or just on a demonstration or any other form of Palestine solidarity work, virtually none of them are safe from arrest. Arrest by armed people. Arrest by people in balaclavas and masks. Arrested by people from the anti-terrorism police. Virtually nobody can now say that they are exempt. But Sarah Wilkinson has suffered more than anybody else. She has endured more than anybody else. And when she recently returned from an heroic, epic journey on the flotilla trying to bring baby food to Gaza, when she returned home to Britain, in a sane Britain, she would have been taken to the palace to be honoured as the best of British. She was held again by the anti-terror police. She'll tell us now what the consequences of all that have been. Please welcome Sarah Wilkinson. Sarah, have I summed up your situation correctly? Maybe you would tell us of your most recent of many brushes with the constabulary.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so sorry that your wife has been so badly affected, because you're right, no one is exempt anymore, and it affects us all in different ways. And hopefully we can all gather together and support each other through these horrible times. Yeah, it was very peculiar to come back from Turkey, who had essentially rescued us, given us medication, doctors, hospitals, full use actually of any hospital department that we wanted. But not only that, they'd put us up in a hotel, they'd sent government officials to make sure we were okay. We had police guards who actually would even just take us to the shops if we asked them to. So yeah, I'm really hesitant to use the word we were treated as heroes. I'm gonna put it in inverted commas, but we were. And you know, we were welcomed by crowds. In fact, thousands of people turned up. And so we go from that to choosing which flight we wanted to come home on, and I needed to return to surrender for my bail, so I had to discharge myself from hospital in Turkey. I could have stayed there for another 2 weeks and I would have been given all of the treatment that I needed. And there is this question over radiation poisoning, because Ketziot or Negev jail is notoriously known for having being radioactively contaminated, and indeed they checked us with Geiger counters on our way out, well, some of us. So to go from that, and you return to Britain, and you get off the aeroplane, and your passport just doesn't work, and you are then picked up by border guards quite roughly. It was quite an aggressive arrest, and put in another pen. An immigration pen, where there were people desperately trying to get into the country. So, of course, I gave this speech to people saying, why do you want to come to Britain? It's bloody awful here. You know, they arrest British citizens just for returning home. And then suddenly these 9 police plainclothes again, turned up, and it was an extremely aggressive arrest in a very, very public place. This is Heathrow Airport. It's one of the busiest, and it was a very busy time for flights to come in. So it's absolutely full of people, and I don't have anything on except these medical scrubs, which were given to me in the hospital because I'd been so ill. I'd managed to get through 2 sets of clothing. So the hospital had very kindly given me their medical scrubs. So I came back looking like a volunteer doctor, to be honest with you. And I was kind of joking about, I'm quite proud of these medical scrubs. You know, people think I've been a medic in Gaza and I've been doing all this amazing volunteer work, when suddenly I'm being searched. And because I haven't got anything on underneath, because the Israelis have had absolutely every item of underwear that I've probably ever owned, so they're sort of searching me and it's quite obvious that I haven't got anything on underneath, because they're pulling my trousers and they're pulling my top up, and so I'm naked underneath. This is British police. So I was moaning an awful lot about it, and then the handcuffs were attached to me so tightly that it was completely unnecessary. I'm non-violent. I've been on a flotilla to deliver humanitarian aid, so I consider myself as doing something good, not doing something criminal, and I'm being dragged literally because I couldn't walk fast enough for these police down these stairs and round the backside entrance and down some more stairs into a police van which is probably half the size of my own toilet. It was tiny. And they wouldn't take the handcuffs off. So then you can't sit back. So as soon as this van set off, I'm being thrown around in this van, and I ended up having to squeeze onto the floor, because otherwise, I was going to end up with a head injury. And that's how Britain treats you. And it's kind of strange. I kind of came from the hullabaloo of Turkey, who had treated me with such respect. We weren't very well after coming out of Israeli custody. Many of us were very, very poorly. Some people had passed out. We were feeling sick and nauseous. We couldn't keep food down, but we were treated with such respect. And to go then straight into the hands of the British police, who treated me as if I had murdered somebody. And then driven all the way, and it's a long way from London to my local police station. They refused to take the handcuffs off, so you can't even sit properly in a car seat. I was transferred to a car sort of halfway, and they refused to take the handcuffs off because I was a danger, and it's astonishing. And I was astonished, and I don't really know what to say about it, apart from the fact I was absolutely shocked. I did know that it was likely that they might arrest me. I thought it might be that they would come on the plane like Richie Medhurst. And because that hadn't happened, I think I sort of relaxed. I didn't say goodbye to my colleagues properly who went through passport control without a problem. And I wish I had done. Really, that was the most upsetting thing, was I hadn't been able to give people a hug who had really, really supported me and really helped me through being ill as well, and flying home feeling unwell, and just being, a really solid support for me. And I couldn't even say goodbye to them, but neither could I tell anybody where I was, because I was refused my phone call. When I got to the station, it's 2:30 in the morning. So they said, "Oh, you can't ring your lawyers. It's 2:30, so you can't have your phone call." And actually that isn't even legal, just because it's 2:30. I mean, that's not really my fault. So I ended up being given a plastic bag to be sick in, because I wasn't well, while they were charging me with these 5 counts of terrorism. Or 5 counts of supporting Palestine, as I might prefer to say, because that's what it is. And also 1 for not giving out my PIN number of my phone, which I couldn't do because I didn't have the PIN number on me, and it was written down. And when they arrested me, I didn't take it, so I didn't know it. So they've charged me for that as well, which is the 5th charge. Now, the thing is with these charges is, even if you get a lenient judge who kind of sees a little bit of your side of it, the minimum sentence for the majority of these charges is 10 years. So even with a lenient judge who might say, okay, well, I'm going to let you off that, but I'm not going to let you off this, or even if he gives me the smallest amount, it has to be 10 years. It's a minimum sentence. So I might not get 14 years or 21 years, but I will always get 10 unless I completely win all 5 charges, which is quite a task. You've got a jury. You've got to speak to the jury. They've got to be unanimous. It is very difficult to win all 5 charges. I might win 4, and 1 is I'm not so successful, but that's a minimum sentence of 10 years. So that is quite a frightening prospect for simply posting articles about Gaza on a very, very regular basis, and I will accept that, 30 to 50 posts per day. But out of 70,000 posts, they've picked out 4 posts. Sorry, I'm so used to calling Twitter, not X. It's 4 posts out of 70,000. And I think that is a bit like saying to a heart surgeon, after 17 hours of successful heart surgery, you yawned once, so we're going to sack you. It's a little bit like that for me, because out of 70,000 tweets, they've managed to pick out 4. And 1 of them is deleted. 1 of them never made it into the public domain, but it's in this open source data. So it's not even available for public viewing, and I deleted it straight away. But I'm even being charged for that one, which nobody has seen at all. It's ridiculous, and it's hard work, and I do understand all the other people that have been arrested, and obviously Dr. Al-Oedin has been arrested recently, and like you say, for elderly people holding up placards, it's ridiculous. And I just hope that one by one, we can all end up being acquitted, and the police will realise they've made a horrendous mistake, or the government will realise they're on the wrong side of history, because that's exactly what this is.
I'm pretty nearly speechless, Sarah, to be honest, and I suspect that most of the audience will be too. This is just not the Britain that our forefathers fought for, fought fascism for. This is not the Britain even that existed just a few short years ago. Bad though that was in many respects. What you've just described to us is that you're facing potentially decades in prison for tweets.
Yeah.
Words in the ether. Yeah. That's called terrorism.
Yeah,
unspeakable.
Yeah, I have relatives who died in the war. Obviously, we all do, fighting fascism, and they'd be turning in their graves if they could see what the country has turned into. And you're right, this is freedom of expression that's under attack. But even it's not even just freedom of expression. I'm reporting the news. The news comes to me via journalists. I often quote the journalists. I do read the articles, obviously. If I think the article's very good, I'll pick out a paragraph from the article as the heading. So it's not often my words. And I will only post something if it is of public interest. So I'm not going to post what I ate for dinner yesterday or what I had for breakfast. I'm going to post what's happening in Gaza. There's a genocide happening. There's hundreds of thousands of Palestinians that are starving to death under a man-made Israeli starvation campaign. And even this ceasefire is a ruse. You know, there was 92 Palestinians per day that was the last count. I think that they said on average are being killed by the Israelis. And now we are in danger of this ceasefire turning back into an incremental genocide where every single day 10 or 12 Palestinian people will be killed, but it's not as noticeable. I report that. Now I'm going to continue reporting it. And you will probably find that by the time I get into court, they will have changed the charges. They will have added new tweets to those charges because I think they realise some of them, well, maybe they're not strong enough. Maybe she might get acquitted from one. They are allowed to arbitrarily change the charges as they go on. So by the time I get into court, those 5 charges could be completely different. They could be completely different tweets altogether. So every single time I post, I put myself in a position where those tweets could be used against me at a future date. They don't have to stick to these charges. They can change them. Now, when in law and order has that been a thing? It's like this secret evidence or, you know, not providing the evidence so you can't defend yourself. I can't really put a case together if by the time I go to court, the posts that they're charging me for are different. So I know I'm continually having to not really work on my case because my case could change. And that is really quite stressful, but that's the point. The point is to create so much stress that you give up on the whole issue of reporting about Gaza. That is what they want. And so I'm just carrying on as I always do, but I'm aware that those 5 charges could become 10 charges as well by the time I get to court. It's completely arbitrary. This terrorism act it's not static. They can change it. They can play about with it. And it's an extraordinarily dangerous situation that we get into today. This is so dangerous for civil society, for journalists, for doctors even, for teachers in schools, for anyone, for parents trying to explain the Gaza situation to their children. We could all end up being arrested. Basically, you're right. Nobody now is exempt.
It's Kafkaesque indeed. Well, they've chosen the wrong person if they think they can intimidate you. And although you balked at the term heroes, I've got to tell you, you are a hero to me, and I suspect to everyone else who's watched this interview. Sarah Wilkinson, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. I'm really not sure what to say after that. Let me take a quick break and then I'll be back with your calls right up to the hour. Stay tuned. My grandson Sean, who's answering the phones tonight, had his first 1 million view tweet about Gaza, and I predict great things from him. So we're not going to go away. We believe in the next life. We believe that we will all be judged on what we did in this life, and that will determine our fate. And so we face whatever we have to face, if not with equanimity. Can't say that the experience was one that one can feel sanguine about. It was genuinely horrific, and I'll never forget it. It was the more horrific for being unexpected by me. I never believed that someone like me, of my age and with my background and with my position in British politics, would ever be told that I was being held under the Terrorism Act. I'm not unmoved by it, but I'm certainly undeterred by it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Will Netanyahu annex the West Bank? Am I committing an offense under the Terrorism Act by reading this out? Will Netanyahu annex the West Bank? Yes or no? Vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. Vote on my X. Vote on the YouTube community poll on the YouTube stream or on my Patreon page. 22,000 people have voted already, and, well, it's kind of heavy towards the yes column. There's a legend on the line. Let me clear the decks. It is May in Oklahoma on Donald Trump. Go ahead, May. Welcome back.
Hey, George. Thank you. I haven't talked to you for a while because I've been working on some health issues, but I have definitely been following you. I wanted to tell you how much love I want to send to you and Gayatri and your family, and I'm so sorry about the trauma that you've been experiencing over that detention. It's horrible, horrific, evil, and you are in my prayers for your rapid and complete healing. You do too much good to be treated like that. The same to Sarah Wilkinson. How awful, I can't even imagine. Also, congratulations on your really triumphant trip to China. Gayatri's report was wonderful and beautiful, and I'm so proud of her. Greetings to Erebos and other legends. Right now, I'm really concerned about Trump. He's waging war on the world. That's understandable, and that's true. And I'm worried about Venezuela, but I'm even more worried that he is waging war on the American people. He is subjecting us to imminent poverty, current loss of rights, inability to speak. Many of us want to leave, but where would we go? It doesn't seem like it would be any better anywhere else. Now he's waging war on us with the National Guard, particularly in Democrat-run cities. Appalling, unconstitutional. I just can't even imagine. And now apparently they're using chemical warfare against ISIS, against the people they are trying to detain. and the people who are protesting them. They're actually grabbing people who are going to asylum court. ICE apparently has agreements with judges. They're dismissing their cases, sending them out in the hall where ICE is arresting them so they can deport them. I don't know where America went, and I'm nervous and I'm scared, as I'm sure you all are in the UK. And I just wanted to share my thoughts with you, George, and tell you how much I appreciate you and all your listeners, and just let you know that I don't know. I don't really know where to go with this, but I'm almost beside myself.
Well, I'm very touched and moved by your words, May, and I wish you a speedy recovery yourself, and the healing that you wished for us, I wish right back at you. I'm acutely conscious that I haven't really covered the internal repression going on in the United States, partly because what happens inside the United States is a matter for the American people. I could say it's not my business, but only up to a point. And the Americans elected the politicians that they've got. And Trump is determined, it seems, to worsen the cohort of politicians that are going to be elected next November of next year. He has declared war on Congressman Thomas Massey. He has declared war on Senator, although he puts Senator in inverted, like Rand Paul was not actually a senator. He's a senator in inverted commas. He has declared war on the best people in the US Congress and given his backing and fundraising to the worst people, starting with Lindsey Graham and Randy Fine. Now, if the American people elect these reprobates, these moral, political degenerates, then that's the business, really, of the American people. But I hear you and I feel you when you say that the sight of the Gravy Seals, these Texan National Guardsmen, who certainly wouldn't be able to chase you if you ran, they would have to and probably would bring you down with a rifle shot because they certainly wouldn't successfully be able to catch you. These National Guardsmen roaming around the United States should cause the American people to ask themselves, where did America go? As you yourself just posed. Well, it was never that great to begin with. Neither was Britain that great to begin with. But in both cases, we are headed for hell in a handcart, economically, socially, and of course, politically. And if we don't stand up and do something, I know you're saying we all need to leave, where can we go? Well, actually, Belarus contains, millions of square miles that are completely empty, and Russia has a lot of space too, but that's not for everybody, of course. And those who can't or won't leave are going to have to stand up and fight clever, not divide themselves one against the other because they don't believe in that or they don't believe in this that person once said in a tweet. It's like what we have here in Britain. I pose every day the case for a broad electoral front with a minimal program to kill the Labour government and to stop the reactionary reform bandwagon. And what I get back is, no, I could never agree with that person because of this, or I will never forgive you for that. Well, good luck then. You're going to have to suffer the consequences if you won't unite with people with whom you have disagreements, yes. But if you will not unite with them, you're going to get something far, far, far worse. And you may never even get a chance to change it again. May in Oklahoma, I wish you the very best. All name is bristling with lots of new names. I really mean that. If you love the mother of all talk shows, why not make a quick donation? Just like this week's top donors. Lisa Roddy, Jonathan King, Alison Hines, Alec Pringle, and Elaine Ryan. I take my hat off to each and every one of you, and each and every one of you who will donate on MOATS.tv before the end of this night. You can become a MOATS donor just by scanning that QR code on the corner of your screen right now. Let's talk to Loris in Manchester on Ukraine. It's the Global University of the Airwaves. From Oklahoma to Manchester. Go ahead, Loris.
Hi, George. Great show. Great guests. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
As you mentioned, in 2022 in Istanbul and in Belarus, there were negotiations to terminate the ongoing current conflict in Ukraine, which Boris Johnson and co sabotaged. With the Ukraine conflict, Western nations have pledged about 174 billion in military assistance. This has resulted in a tragic loss of life and wasted vast monetary resources. The current government in Britain has committed up to 13 billion of military aid. Now, it seems like madness to continue this further when all direct parties involved seem to want an end to the war, including the United States of America, Russia, and the Ukraine. However, of late, European governments seem to be egging on this conflict, including the current British Labour government. I find it hard to believe, with all the capabilities of the Western world and with the very well qualified people in intelligence services, the military institutions, and the various government divisions that analyse things, that they cannot understand that continuation of the same path achieves nothing, and the madness of carrying on the same policy. To finish my point, the British Labour government has cut disability benefit and personal independence payments, PIPs payments, all the while pouring money into the war industry. Here in the UK, we're currently going through a cost of living crisis, and I do not understand how this benefits anyone in the UK, in the US for that matter, Ukraine, Russia, or anywhere else in the world. This is a senseless loss of life and a waste of money. I don't understand, other than perhaps the weapons manufacturers, how this benefits
well, that's
anybody.
a great call. First of all, Loris, that is a really great call, and I hope you won't be a stranger and that you will call us regularly. It did benefit Boris Johnson, and it did benefit the company that gave him £1.3 million to scupper the Ukraine peace agreement penciled in Istanbul just a couple of months after the war began. It benefited them. It's benefiting the military-industrial complex in all kinds of ways, because, of course, 30 billion taken out of the British taxpayer's pocket for military aid to Ukraine is largely spent on the products of arms companies who, in one way or another, either through the revolving door when the politicians leave office, or in donations that are recorded and declared, or who knows, in donations that are not recorded or declared. But in one way or another, most of that £30 billion that could have been spent here in Britain, could have been in Manchester, could have been spent in Scotland, could have been spent in Yorkshire, was spent instead on weapons of war built by British military industrial complex firms. So it did benefit some people. It didn't benefit the Ukrainians, only 23% of whom want this war to continue, millions of whom have fled the country, many of them of military age, have fled the country rather than fight for Zelensky because they are not ready to die. Over which side of a line Kupiansk will lie at the end of all this, when it has been in 4 different countries in the last 100 years. They are not ready to die for that. And Starmer has benefited because his approval ratings, now 11%, would presumably vanish altogether if people woke up to the fact that this has been a giant scam and that it has caused the loss of life of well over 1 million Ukrainians, on whose behalf we're told that all of this is being done. But the British people haven't benefited. You're right. The Ukrainian people haven't benefited. The Russian people haven't benefited. The car workers that are about to go out of business haven't benefited. The citizens of the European Union have not benefited. But the dwarfs, moral and political dwarfs, who rule them, in many cases entirely unelected, they've benefited and will benefit still. That's why they want it to keep going. We have a situation now, Loris, that the right-wing Republican president of the United States wants a war in Europe to end, and the social democrats, Christian Democrats, centrists ruling Europe and ruling the European Union, they want the war to continue, even as their own public opinion ratings disappear down the drain. Great callers, thanks so much for it. Now you can leave comments on YouTube. You just scan that QR code again and leave a comment, like Stephanie Caro has. Sarah, you're a hero. And so say all of us. Black Flint says, Prince Andrew, no police search? None at all. Gisela says, Netanyahu has it almost annexed already, in spite or despite the president's and vice president's protestations. That's my view entirely, Gisela. Nikki A says, yesterday, British people who serve in the IDF, who have committed who knows what crimes, can come and go without arrest or charges. This is disgraceful. Nikki, it is disgraceful, but it's also completely inexplicable. Who could defend that? Who could defend a doctor in the British Health Service going to Gaza, killing people, and then returning freely through Heathrow Airport and returning to their job in the NHS, whilst Sarah, who tries and fails to deliver baby food to Gaza, is treated at Heathrow in the way that she just described to you and all of us, how she was treated. How can anyone justify that? What argument would you even begin to advance to justify that? And S. Downs says, why cannot King Charles sack the government and pardon all political prisoners? Why is the royal family so silent? Well, King Charles is one of them. Let me take a quick break because one of my best friends is up next. And he's one of your best friends because what he is doing is trying to avert total war on the European continent. He is the journalist and broadcaster, Chay Bowes, a fine Irish man who's no doubt celebrating the magnificent victory yesterday in the Irish presidential elections. Congratulations, President Connolly, and Chay Bowes is up next. Stay tuned. His approval ratings are in the toilet. He won a huge mandate well less than a year ago, and he's thrown it all away. He has an approval rating of just under 40% now, and a disapproval rating of all the others. There are no don't knows in the issue of Donald Trump. And so he has maximized the number of people who hate him or dislike him, and he has systematically undermined the voting base that formerly liked him. And I don't know whether that is because of his donors, because he's intellectually challenged, because it's of his age. I really don't know.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Coming up for 25,000 people voted on the poll. Will Netanyahu annex the West Bank? Yes or no? You've got about 45 minutes to get your vote in. Let's get that poll up to 30,000 if we can. Now, Chay Bowes is a very dear friend of mine. He's a master of the arts of geopolitics. He's a political commentator and a broadcaster supreme with a bigger and bigger following. He's also an Irishman. So let me start by asking him in congratulating the new Irish president. She's anti-NATO. She's against the war in Ukraine. She's for an end to the war in Gaza. And she won by a landslide, Chay, as you predicted she was going to.
Yeah, George, thanks for having me again. Always a pleasure. I hope you're well, and Gayatri. Catherine Connolly's victory, I think it's got to be taken in the context of a European Union which is increasingly refusing to accept any kind of dissent. And that's what, in my view, makes this victory, this resounding victory from the Irish electorate. I mean, well north of 65% of the vote, I would say, voting for her, this woman, a very sort of ordinary lady, not a woman prone to bling, a Gaelic Irish speaker, interested in the arts, a seasoned left-wing, initially a Labour politician, leaving the Labour Party. But what's interesting about Catherine Connolly is that all of the left in Ireland united behind her to get her elected. And the election was a resounding success. To put it into context, the establishment candidate, a lady called Heather Humphreys, who is from the centre-right party Fine Gael. Now, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, as you know, but our viewers may not know, have essentially dominated Irish politics since the Irish Free State came into being and in the Irish Republic. They've dominated. These were two political parties that swore they'd drown in each other's blood before they'd coalesce together. They were Civil War enemies, but they have recently, in the last decade, grown closer and closer together. And now they are in government, making sure that the left-wing parties and any other progressive parties are kept out of power. So Catherine Connolly being elected by such a massive landslide is a huge, huge stone in the shoe now. Now, the Irish president has very little power other than constitutional power to represent the state abroad, to sign laws into law, if you like, when they're presented to her. But if she's like Michael D. Higgins, her predecessor, another left-wing man who was very supportive of the struggle in South America, Central America for dignity and liberty. If she's like him, and I don't think she's going to be able to stay silent on issues, as you say, like NATO, neutrality, the war in Ukraine, the emergence of a militarized Germany, which he openly critiqued, saying that it was very similar to what's happened in the 1930s, what's happening in Germany. So she's shown that she's not scared to speak out. And I think I differ with her on some social issues. I would have been on the left in my youth, but not a woke leftist. And I've drifted further and further into the centre as I've got older and become more pragmatic, as you say, about unifying people around central pillars. But people have unified around her. And it's a huge message to the government, but it's also a message to the EU. And most importantly, in my view, it's a message to NATO that the Irish Republic, the people of the Irish Republic, have absolutely no interest in joining their blood-soaked endeavours, and we will at no stage be joining that cabal. And there's been a very insipid move in the centre, in these governing parties, in the political elites in Ireland, in the media, to try and fear. To deploy fear about Russia, about, we're all under attack in Ireland. And it's absolutely failed, which is a huge success. So I wish her all the very best. But it's very good for other people in Europe. You see Babiš being elected in Czechia as well. So it shows that democracy does work when people get together and they bind around a single number of ideas. As you said prior to my joining, that it's so essential that we put aside petty differences and unite around specific rights and privileges. I mean, I recently, as you see, tweeted that Tommy Robinson was facing court under the same laws that you and your good wife were, penalised under illegally. These laws of the elites are the enemy of everybody. And what we have to do is we have to sort of learn to disagree respectfully and make the common ground in the welfare of our own peoples. And it's something we're forgetting to do. I think what you said is very, very pertinent.
We interviewed Sarah Wilkinson just before you, Chay, and she described what could only be described as fascist brutality. A woman treated in this way, Gestapo-like, 9 police officers, 9 plainclothes police officers. Jesus, we must have no crime of any other nature going on in Britain. 9 people manhandling a sick woman on her way back from the flotilla in hospital gear with no underwear on, searching her, bodily searching her, then tying her in zip ties, tossing her in a van, driving her hundreds of miles. I mean, it was almost unbelievable, the story that she was telling. You were taken off an aeroplane in Romania, where you were legally entitled to be as a European Union citizen and morally entitled to be as a journalist covering an election. You were treated in the way you were treated. I and Gayatri were treated in the way that we were treated. Europe is really going to the dogs, Jay.
Yes, and interestingly enough, I recently met the Romanian politician who I was arrested for going to interview. And a very vocal lady, Diana Soșaca, a Romanian oppositionist, regularly holding people like Ursula von der Leyen to account. And I met her, and she was so happy to see me that she embraced me and said, "Thank you so much for coming," because they were probably always going to try and stop you coming to Romania, because the Romanian election was stolen in broad daylight with the backing of the European Union, with the backing of NATO. The Western media completely turned its back, just as it's turned its back on your case, as it's turned its back on this victim interviewed before me. So we do live in this post-truth reality Orwellian world now, where there is no freedom for the enemies of freedom. This is the mantra that is echoing through Whitehall, through the White House, through Brussels, that anybody who speaks out in dissent against the machine is the enemy of the machine. And there's a singular truth and a singular narrative about Ukraine, about Gaza, about the imperial appetites for the European Union, for example, calls for a European army, calls for Canada now to join the European Union. This aggressive globalization is being deployed in a micro way, you could say, with your case, my case, the case of the good lady doctor, but also in a macro case, because we lack a free media. I've been recently researching BBC documentaries from the 1960s, 70s and 80s for a project I'm involved in. And the amazing amount of freedom for people to challenge the state in those documentaries is quite remarkable, given the sterilization of debate at the moment in Europe, in the United Kingdom, in Ireland. I have lived in Russia for the entirety of the conflict in Ukraine, in this phase of it, since 2022. I've been on the front lines. I've been in Bryansk. I've been in Kursk. I've seen so much. I've seen people killed. I've seen bombings. I've spoken to senior politicians here, opposition people. Not once has the Irish media asked me to attend a single television program. Not a single time. Not once has a single Irish radio station asked me to come on. I have a social media following which dwarfs the entirety of them combined on a global sense. I've more American people listen to what I'm doing than the entirety of the Irish population, but yet they refuse to allow me to come on to the airwaves in Ireland to debate with no notes, no assistance, alone. I've told them I'll attend anywhere to sit at a table with them to debate the realities about the engine and the germination of this conflict in Ukraine. They refuse to acknowledge I exist. And when you have a legacy media which is so aggressively deployed in the service of this propaganda by osmosis, everywhere people go in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in Ireland, they're pickled in this propaganda. And I'll round this back to Catherine Connolly's win. The fact that the Irish people came out in such numbers, it was a relatively small turnout, and many people spoiled their votes out of frustration. Also, that has to be mentioned. But the fact that they rejected this narrative is so heartwarming for us, on this side of the fence, the dissenters. And it does show that with organisation and with determination and platforms like you, it's not an accident, George, that you were singled out to be silenced. It's not an accident that I was, because we have become a stone in the shoe to this pernicious establishment. We don't always agree on everything, and we shouldn't have to always agree on everything. But it shows you that the mantra on the establishment globalist side is that you must agree with everything. The legislation under which you were detained illegally, in my view, is so draconian, as you say. If you don't answer the questions, you're guilty of a crime. You're not arrested, but you're detained. But if you leave, you will be arrested and detained. All of your personal belongings are stolen from you, essentially. And then you're left in this horrendous limbo, wondering what's going to happen next. It's quite remarkable. You're guilty, but not guilty. You are, but you're not. It's a terrible, terrible purgatory, legal purgatory that people are being put in. And you and I are far enough up or down the pipe, whichever way you'd like to look at it, that we have a platform and we can speak. But even in people's families, in the workplace, people are frightened to speak out now. And there's a name for that. It's called dictatorship, it's called fascism, and it's called the erosion of the very fundamentals of free European and British society. And I think, thanks to people like you, we can continue to get a platform to tell people of their rights. It's very important that people are aware of their rights, but it's also important to tell people that we do and can change things through the political system. And we have to continue to try to unite around certain pillars and rights and privileges, which are God-given, were hard-won in Ireland, in Scotland, in the United Kingdom. our ancestors demand of us that we stand up for these freedoms, George.
A marvelous answer. Let's turn to the answer given by Vladimir Putin today. I'm getting the impression that the Russians have tired of the will he, won't he, will he, won't he, will he, won't he join the dance of the Donald Trump administration. They are tiring of these yapping chihuahuas and poodles and dachshunds of the European Union, and they are deciding that enough is enough. This unleashing of the mother of all cruise missiles that Putin did today, which is undeniably, like the oreshnik before it, military game changer, I think that's a sign that the Russians are taking their gloves off, Jay. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think, look, what's most interesting is Vladimir Putin and the Russian state are deployed as this saber-rattling, incompetent bunch of lunatics who are at any moment about to unleash catastrophe on Europe, destroy our civilization, eat our children, when in reality, it's the rudderless elites in Europe, in particularly Brussels and in London, who are very much the true holders of that title. The Russians have been remarkably, in my view, reserved and restrained in the prosecution of this war, in my view. And I think people are tiring. I think you're right. The sense here is one of this roller coaster where Mr. Trump on a Monday will be going left, on a Tuesday he's going right, on a Thursday he's not going anywhere, and then he goes back to the end of it, creating rationale and narrative out of created countries, created histories, then denying it, bringing Zelensky in. The Russians, are entertained by it initially, and it seems to me now, you're right, that they're losing patience with this process. And I wrote today that I think now that the Russians are starting to realize that the Americans maybe aren't that serious about ending this conflict. And remember, if the Americans cut off the arms supply to the EU now, the EU have nothing to give Ukraine. There's no money. The production is very low as America pushes China further and further. In another ludicrous way, the entirety of the United States military machine relies on Chinese rare earths. It's such a almost comedic position that the Americans are in, that most of their F-35 jets, critical components are from Chinese rare earths, as is their aircraft carriers and a lot of their space technology. But yet they're saying that they're willing to go to war with China for declaring the ownership of China, which Taiwan is, which they agreed to in the One China policy. It's comedic. It really is comedic. And then you see Mr. Zelensky, this little dictator, trotting into the White House and playing this role of a statesman when he's like this sheepish 4-year-old visiting an uncle, hoping to get $1 in his hand. If he gets it, he's happy. If he's not, he retreats. It's quite remarkable, really. And the Russians are very serious people. They take the function of the state seriously. They take certain things very seriously. And Vladimir Putin has an exceptional capacity, it seems to me, to tolerate this foolishness and this unprofessional way things are done. But I think what happened was in the preliminary meeting between the foreign ministers, Rubio and Lavrov, my information and my sources would tell me that there was something of a breakdown during that discussion, that Mr. Lavrov, as has been the case since people say to me, what do the Russians want? I say, watch Vladimir Putin on the evening that he launched the special military operation. He will tell you exactly what he wanted then. It's exactly what they wanted now. The Russians have not deferred from their stated aims in Ukraine. And I don't think they're going to. I think Mr. Lavrov reaffirmed that to Mr. Rubio. Rubio wanted a ceasefire and then talks. The Russians have said, we're not going to let the Ukrainians off the ropes. As you say, Kupiansk, Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian army is in a perpetual collapse. And the Russians would be strategically, absolutely foolhardy to allow them to do that. So the Russians have stuck to their guns on that. And I think Marco Rubio is trying to express himself in a sort of, let's say, a geostrategically masculine way with Lavrov. I think he picked the wrong guy to spar with. I think he went back to Donald Trump and Donald Trump was then forced to back his guy, and then rescinded on this idea that there would be a meeting. The meeting wasn't cancelled because it hadn't been planned. That's another reality, which the celebrating Western elites press are saying, the meeting was cancelled. Zelensky made Putin or Mr. Trump cancel the meeting. It couldn't be more further from the truth. Zelensky is so irrelevant to this entire dance, if you like. It's almost comedic in itself. He had nothing to do with it. Zelensky is merely an appointed pawn by the United States. They could disappear him tomorrow if they wanted, much like in Vietnam, when the appointed leader was disappeared in a CIA-backed coup. Same thing could happen to Zelensky. He's very much irrelevant. But what is relevant is at what stage does Russia lose patience with the process? Because there's this perception in Brussels and in some parts of Washington that the Russians are going to drop to their knees because of some sanctions, or they're going to, begin to say, "Oh, sorry, we didn't mean it. Now, can we please do a deal?" They just don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know the Russian psyche, the Russian psychology around this thing. And there's also a perception that Russia is in a heated up fifth gear of a war economy. The Russians aren't even in a war economy, but they could be in a war economy. The Russians haven't done anything close to what Ukraine has done in mobilization terms of its military into Ukraine. They could do it. And I wrote today that the more this goes on, the more there's a sense, even among liberal Russians, that if we're going to be hung for a sheep, we might hung for a lamb, we might as well be hung for a sheep when it comes to Ukraine. We might as well take Odessa, which is a very sore point among a lot of the moderates here. And the other thing that people don't realize in the West is, and this is the most sincerely held view by me and many others who observe this, is that if you don't have Vladimir Putin, what you do get could be a far more hard-line leader. Russia has an exceptionally powerful military now who have, they haven't achieved what they've done without loss and without sacrifice. And the longer this goes on, the more the Russian public and that complex within the Russian political landscape, if you like, the more powerful it becomes. We've sacrificed them. They haven't sacrificed their children, their sons, their fathers for nothing, to walk away because Marco Rubio says there has to be a ceasefire, to allow the Ukrainians, who will tell you that it's Wednesday when it's a Friday, to rearm or to go about some nefarious business bombing here, there and everywhere in Moscow. So it is a very dangerous time, not because Russia will do something rash, but because Russia may dispense with the idea of accommodating the West at all. And if that happens, we may see what a full-scale invasion looks like. This full-scale invasion that the Western media has been telling us about for 3.5 years, you may actually see what that looks like. And believe me, I don't think it's something that you want to witness. And the nuclear cruise missile today, the oreshnik, and the announcement of Vladimir Putin in a very uncharacteristically angry response when he was asked what would happen if they do strike Moscow. He said, well, the response could be overwhelming, maybe even devastating. Let them think about that. And then he walked away because he was probably a little angry. This was uncharacteristic from President Putin, in my view. And I think it defines the exasperation now that the Russians are feeling, and the Russian public as well, who are very vocal and very engaged and very animated when it comes to this type of stuff. As you well know, as being a man that's visited Russia and known the Russian psyche, they're quiet people, they're determined, they work under the radar, they move around in public quite quietly. But underneath the hood, there's an immense capacity to dedicate themselves to a goal. As we saw in the Second World War, this is the people that lost 27 million in the Soviet Union, 60% of which were Russians. There's a really dangerous selective amnesia in the West when it comes to Russians. They actually believe that the lack of a McDonald's or a bottle of Coca-Cola will impact on these people. They're exceptionally wrong. So it's a worrying time, George.
Fantastic interview. Thank you very much indeed. As always, Chay Bowes, a master of the political arts and journalist and broadcaster supreme. Thank you for joining us. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Well, you've got 15 minutes left to vote. Will Netanyahu annex the West Bank? Yes or no? Now, let's take Brian in Ireland. After all, Catherine Connolly, about whom he wishes to speak, is now his president. Brian, welcome. What would you like to say?
Well, good morning, George. I hope you're keeping well and not good weight of yours. George, I'm from County Tyrone in the north, but we can't vote on the. Unfortunately, we can't vote because of obviously the jurisdiction. But she still is our president. You know, I'm an Irish man. I live in Ireland. She's our president. But she is a person that represents us. You know, our values, our outlook on the world. And if I could articulate to people listening, it's like I would equate it to the people of England voting for Sarah Wilkinson as their queen or president. So I just want to say that I hope she's a beacon of hope for people in Europe that democracy works. So I'll just leave it at that.
Well, that's a beautiful call, Brian, and I'm sure that you've been heard across the world with that call. It is for a largely ceremonial post, but it was an election. And it was an election with a clear winner and an election with very clear losers. And if the Irish public can follow this up with a crushing defeat for the two cheeks of the same arse that are represented in the Irish government, then they will have struck a blow, not just for Ireland, but for the world. And let's hope that the four green fields of Ireland are reunited in the lifetime of you and me. Thanks, Brian. Now a big thanks to tonight's top donors who've been on to the MOATS.tv website since we came on air. So get your name up in lights, just like Douglas McFarland, Kenneth Morris, Daniel Ilyenko, Ray Walton, and Ron Singh. A big thanks to you, our top donors for tonight. A big thanks to everyone who donated anything at all. And a big thanks in advance to those of you who are going to do so. Just go to MOATS. It's very, very easy. Let's hear from Charlie in Dorset in England on Sarah Wilkinson. Go ahead, Charlie.
Hello, George. I'm pleased you're okay. I hope you are well and your wife. What I want to say after listening to that interview with that lady is that I am 87-year-old man, and I'm glad my father and 5 brothers and cousins are not alive to see that, because that's not what they joined the British Army and fought for. They were prisoners of war, and one of my uncles was a Spitfire pilot. I'm disgusted with this government, and if I was a young man, I think I could have made my mission to shoot them. That's what I would have liked my mission. First of all, Netanyahu, and then our Mr. Prime Minister. It's disgusting. All my life as a young man, when my family come to this country, we believed this country to be a free and fair country. It is now turned to the worst country I can imagine. What do you say, George?
That's an incredibly powerful call, Charlie. Of course, we don't agree with anybody shooting anybody, and we know you mean it metaphorically. You are 87 years old, after all. But do you mind if I ask, Charlie, from which country your people came?
Cyprus.
It's astonishing, isn't it, that people came to this land, including to stand up to fascism in 1939 to 45. Your ancestors did not need to fight. Neither did one of my grandfathers. He was an Irishman, a Republican, a communist. He had no obligation whatsoever to join up in the British Army under Montgomery and fight in the deserts of Libya and Egypt, and to fight his way up the leg of Italy and suffer the traumas of Monte Cassino. He had no obligation, neither did your people, and yet they did, because they believed, whether they were right or they were wrong, they believed that Britain was not that kind of country, the kind of country that occupied Europe was under fascism, the kind of country that Britain is increasingly becoming, with the knock on the door, with 3, 4, or 9 plainclothes armed policemen manhandling a woman, manhandling her in that brutal way that the Gestapo used to manhandle women and others. It is an astounding thing that we have gone so quickly and so quietly into that fight. Charlie, I'm so delighted that you are with us, that you are watching, and that you called with that powerful call to the show this evening. Let me deal with some comments that are coming in. Pittsburgh Dude 87 says, Chay Bowes might be my favourite Irishman since Phil Lynott. Praise indeed. Bernard Doyle says, congratulations to Catherine Connolly on her victory in winning the Irish presidency. And Mourns Lad says, the irony though is that Catherine Connolly, the new Irish president, follows the Dublin government line of supporting Zelensky. And Rob O'Gorman says Ukraine has 2 encircled pockets totaling about 10.5 thousand troops. Ever see what the Russian TOS-1 TOS rockets with thermobaric warheads can do? Well, as President Putin himself said tonight, this 10,500 Ukrainian soldiers now encircled in a castle, they should lay down their arms, and he instructed the Russian armed forces to treat them with the maximum kindness and care if they do. And Nikki A says, who were Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas elected by? Of course, absolutely no one at all. Another famous caller now on the mother of all talk shows is Big Tomato from North America. He wants to talk about Iran and Israel. Big Tomato, welcome back.
Pleased to hear your voice, George, and I apologize. I was disconnected while in queue, so I hope I hadn't kept you waiting, but I do appreciate that you've taken the call. I wanted to follow up on our conversation, our exchange a couple of weeks ago. I asked for your insights about the strategic calculus potentially for the use of atomic weapons in the conflict between Iran and Israel. You very nicely laid out the many reasons that may not happen, other reasons it would not be particularly wise for that to be the direction chosen. I've thought some further about this in the intervening weeks. I've listened to other conversations, and so I hope to rekindle that conversation to ask you today, if we are to suppose that that is done, that some that some button with a skull and crossbones is pushed, which I assume that despite the would-be guardrails, it's probably easier done than said in reality. I don't know for sure. I was not alive on the one and only incident or paired incidents in which this was done in history, but I'm curious what the aftermath would look like, what the morning after, I guess, or the minute after looks like. I suppose World War II ended with the use of atomic weapons. Arguably, maybe it was already done and it was just done for a joyride for adventurism. But in any case, does World War III begin with such a decision, if we're to suppose it happens, or does it basically bring to an immediate end these conflicts? I've heard conjectures that it would, for instance, promote, entice, let's say, a nation like Pakistan to follow in suit. I don't entirely understand what those motivations would be. I realize Pakistan is filled with intellectuals, but they're not necessarily those sitting in seats at the table of government, as I understand it. I've learned a great deal listening to you about that topic. Or that, for example, it would motivate Russia to move forward with such use in Ukraine. I see no real reason that would make sense. I don't sense that the Lavrovs and Putins and so forth need an excuse like a schoolboy that someone got their turn and now they want theirs. I sense that there's quite a bit more circumspection in their decision making. So in any case, if this were dreadfully, woefully to occur, is there any projection for what conceivably would follow? Does this mean lights out immediately for the Iranian nation? Does it mean the beginning of a new theater of warfare there locally, regionally, around the world? And I guess I'll try to find a place to add a question mark here at the end.
I guess you've made your point. I guess you've made your point, and given the hour, I'd better deal with it. The hypothetical Israeli nuclear attack on Iran would, of course, have devastating consequences throughout the Persian Gulf area. It would not lead to World War III. Russia would not nuke Israel and destroy the Levant in response or retaliation to an Israeli nuclear attack on Iran. However, Iran, even via dead men's switches, would rain such devastation by presumably conventional missiles that Israel would also be destroyed. It would not be destroyed in a nuclear mushroom cloud, because we should presume, for the sake of this argument, that Iran does not have nuclear weapons, though I caution you that it may. And in any case, it could very quickly from the amount of enriched uranium that it has. But let's assume for this argument that Iran has no nuclear weapon to fire back. It has thousands, maybe 10,000 or more non-nuclear, hypersonic, and other ballistic missiles targeted on Israel that would render Israel itself null and void. It might not be under a nuclear winter in the way that Iran would be, but it would be nonetheless destroyed, which is one of the reasons why I don't believe that it's going to happen. Equally, and for the same reason that I gave you last time, Donald Trump is madly in love with Qatar. He's madly in love with Saudi Arabia. But both Qatar and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates would themselves cease to exist in those circumstances, which is another reason why I don't believe that it's going to happen. Pakistan would definitely not fire its nuclear weapons at Israel in retaliation for the nuclear annihilation of Iran. So you can put that out of your mind. Pakistan is currently governed by an American shoeshine boy, and he's not going to fire Pakistan's nuclear weapons at Israel. So I don't believe that your hypothesis, which we've now discussed several times, by the way, is going to happen. But I do believe that Netanyahu is going to attack Iran again. And I do believe that Iran's response will be exponentially fierce than anything that the Israeli state has experienced before. And I do believe that if Netanyahu does this, perhaps for electoral reasons, perhaps for legal reasons, to avoid going to prison himself, if he does do that, then that too will hasten the end of the settler apartheid state. Now, if you haven't downloaded the MOATS podcast yet, please make sure you do. You can do it by just checking into moats.tv or by scanning the QR code on the screen right now. This week, we're in the top 10 for politics in Peru, Nigeria, Indonesia again, Botswana, UAE, and Egypt. How about that? Now, once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review and rate it. It helps us grow the podcast. A better race on. Number 10 is in Florida on Palestine. Yes, number 10. How can I help you?
Sir. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Mr. Galloway. I've been listening to you for many months, and previously I used to listen to the French Connection, Daryl Bradford Smith, under the name of IamTheWitness.com. I have learned a lot of things historically, and I follow this history repeats itself. Mm-hmm. It happened to my father, 1915, the Armenian massacres. I did not see my grandfather. Mm. And history is repeating itself. And who is behind it? Who's behind it? Who supported it? Remember, these are the Khazarians. And the Khazarians, they changed their name from one to another. And who helped the Khazarians? The U.S. have helped them to establish this monster. This Middle East, it will never be changed. It will be totally, how should I say, confused. I don't blame Gamal Abdel Nasser. He was a hero. He was truthful. And he was saying that. I remember those days. I'm 85 years old. I want to get it out of my chest. Because these people, they have sickness in their mind, illness. And every time they told us when I was in school, they used to say, oh, the Turks did it to the Armenians. The Turks, that when these people that I'm talking about, the Khazarians, when they go to war, they don't go to war under their flag, they go under somebody else's flag. Like what they're doing now, or what they did before in Vietnam with through the Americans, wherever, all over the world, and even Second War. They are right behind it. Several years ago, I used to watch the television. I came home at 3 o'clock. I was watching the PBS, and senators from the Foreign Relations Committee, they were questioning the ambassador of the United States during Reagan's era. He came here and they were questioning him. They said, Mr. Ambassador, what do you think about the Costa Rican people? You know what was his answer was? He didn't answer right away. He started thinking and thinking and thinking. I kept my eyes right focusing on his mouth and his voice. He said, the Costa Rican people, look how far a distance are they? Costa Ricans from the Armenians, from the Middle East, long distance. He said, the Costa Rican people, they would go back not to World War II, but to World War I, what we have done to the Armenians. I said to myself, I spoke to myself, this is it. The page, the book is closed. I'm done. If I knew America did such things to us, and now history repeats itself, and he was here now, he wants to create another war in Central America. I said, America, I close your books, finish. You are out of, I dropped, America.
Well, they are, it's very clear. Thanks for the call. It's very clear that they are bent on yet another war. How that squares with the ambition to get a Nobel Peace Prize, how that allows your ego to boast that you are the peace president, that you've stopped 8 wars, 9 wars, 10 wars, 11 wars, however many wars he's now claiming to have stopped. That squares with what he's ready to do imminently in Venezuela is simply beyond me. I mean, if ever there was an argument against the United States empire, it has to be that the man in charge of it is certifiable, that his actions are the most reckless and most bewilderingly confused. This is a man who, in just less than a year, has threatened to invade and annex Canada, to invade and annex Greenland, belonging to his NATO ally, Denmark. This is a man who insisted that he was ready to invade Panama, is now about to invade Venezuela, is the man that is sending forces to Gaza, bombed Iran. This is in less than 1 year in office. How such a man can credibly be reported as a peace president is simply bamboozling. And I don't think we say that often enough. I need to take a break because my good wife Gayatri has got to get in here for her social media roundup. Stay tuned, you don't want to miss that, I know. Tommy in Glasgow is no longer in Glasgow. He's actually in the inner sanctum of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Palestine. Go on yourself, Tommy. How did a Glasgow man get there?
how did I get there? Because you're my leader for Palestine. For years, decades, 5 decades, 50 years or more, you have been championing the cause of Palestine. You know, what you forgot about Palestine, most people don't even know, you know, but you've led people like me. You know, you helped me. Anyway, yeah, I was in there today. The first prayer, the second prayer of the day, Zohar prayer, I tried to get in there. And by the grace and will of God, do you know what happened? The Zionist pig actually pushed me. He pushed me away. He said, do you want to have a go? Thinking it was a big hard man with a big gun. Is it a Glaswegian? Yeah, I want to have a go. But I said, I want to go in there. I want to go into the masjid, you muppet. Never said muppet, but I said, yeah, I want to have a go. I want to go into the masjid. And he pushed me again. And alhamdulillah, he pushed me again. But anyway, sabr, as the Arabic say, patience, have patience. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I went through another couple checkpoints. One even had the chutzpah to say to me in a funny accent, go back to the UK. Anyway, finally, alhamdulillah, with a bit of patience, sabr, persistence, I managed to get in and read my Zohar prayer by the skin of my teeth. And what a blessed sanctuary it is. And I'm on here to try and encourage many people to come. The Christian, today I went to Bethlehem, Church of Nativity. It was a pilgrimage on behalf of my great grandfather and grandmother, may they rest in peace. And my mother, who's quite sick, and she kept saying, I wish I could be their son. And she was, because in spirit through me, being in there, and, you know, these Palestinian people in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, the suffering and pain and indignity they have to face on a daily basis of how they treat these beautiful people, and they are beautiful people. So my call out tonight to you, our great leader, you know, and what the show, you have decimated the industry of news, you know, the liars, and you're a bastion for truth, and your show, alhamdulillah, all praise for God, and give you strength to carry on, all the great listeners. And I said a special dua, a special supplication for you, George, for your family, for all the listeners out there, for the Muslims. If you've not been to Masjid Al-Aqsa, you need to get your finger out. It's not for Palestine, it's for the Muslim Ummah, it's for the people who are Islamic. You must go. You must go, please, for the love of God, go. Everyone go to Masjid Al-Aqsa. Everyone defend the faith. Fight against the Netanyahu, the Satanists that are out there. Defend the holy sanctuaries. Are you there, Christian? Are you there, Muslim? Stand with us. George, lead the way, brother. Alhamdulillah.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. She's the woman that makes the news. It is my good wife Gayatri's social media news roundup. This is cozy, Gayatri, on a cold Minsk evening. And boy, it is cold.
It is rather
in
cold.
Here, never mind outside. Traveling.
So, we are in Minsk, in Belarus, and as you know, Belarus has been banned from the Olympics ever since the 2022.
Yeah. Not Israel, though.
No. Well, I mean, this is because they are, because President Lukashenko is an ally of President Putin, and because both of them are responsible for the war, right? So Russia and Belarus suspended. Now, last week there was a lot of big news going around Indonesia, refusing entry to Israeli athletes at the artistic gymnastic world championship that took place in Jakarta. Big event. But Jakarta refused entry to the Israelis. Now, what did the IOC say? Sports and politics cannot be combined, so suspend Indonesia. And what turns out, this is the second time IOC suspended Indonesia over the same subject. In 1962, Indonesia hosted the Asian Games. Wonderful. So many countries participated in this event, but Indonesia refused entry cards to two. Which one do you think?
I'm guessing.
You're guessing right. It is indeed Israel. They tried to join Asia, but we refused them. The second country was Taiwan. So IOC said the same thing back in the 60s. Sports and politics cannot be combined, so suspend Indonesia. And what did President Sukarno reply, my leader? He said, the IOC itself is a political tool, because otherwise the People's Republic of China and North Vietnam would be part of the IOC as its members. So the IOC has proven itself to be just a tool for imperialists and colonialists.
So China was not in, but Taiwan was in?
Correct. And North Vietnam was not in, and the South was. So, I mean, how sports and politics are not combined. So President Sukarno said, you know what, never mind the suspension, we're going to make our own games. We're going to call it the game of the great emerging forces. So
that's a good name.
It was, in short, it was called GANEFO. And what happened? 10 countries were the founding members, and then 36 other joined. So almost 50 countries from across the world. The following year, I mean, right after the 1962 Asian Games. So in 1963, Indonesia once again hosted this giant sports event, but this time on its own terms. So 50 countries from mostly independent countries and mostly socialist countries in Europe, but from all over. How do you call it?
Well, I mean, it's a pity that died out.
It did die out.
I mean, we still had that today.
Well, I mean, I'm calling on our sports minister, Eric Thohir, to put up GANEFO 2.0. I mean, Indonesia is ready for it. The people are ready for it. This is, oh yeah, I wanted to say very importantly, out of these 50 countries from across the world, you know which other country participated? Palestine. Palestine was
in 62.
63. So 63, Palestine was an official member at Indonesia's GANEFO, Games of the New Emerging Forces. So this was really, Sukarno was setting the stage, Indonesia was setting the stage. So back in 1962, Indonesia was suspended by the IOC over its stance against Israel, and once again in 2025.
Wow.
Yes, so it's an amazing occurrence, full circle, really.
I'm just noticing your nail.
Uh-huh.
This Palestine nail, Sukarno would be proud of that. Well done, daughter of Indonesia. Anything else, Riley?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to continue on the fact that our stance on Palestine stands so strong because the UN General Secretary of the Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, he's the Brit, right? Well, he recently visited Gaza, and he put out this viral video of him just going through. It's on screen now. He just goes. He was just filming his trip from Gaza City to Khan Yunis, and this video went viral with commentaries from left, right, and center everywhere. Now he's come back and he's made his devastating testimony at the UN. And I'm linking it to tonight's poll because you're asking whether Netanyahu is going to annex the West Bank. Well, I'm quoting Tom Fletcher here. He said, you know, there's no substitute for being there and feeling it, smelling it. You know, death on this scale has a sound and smell that does not leave you. And he continues by describing that in the West Bank, there were recently a 13-year-old girl and her 3-year-old brother abducted, and they were later found tied to a tree. So he says, future generation will hold us to account to this. We should fear that judgment.
Amen. Fear the judgment of the judgment day, at least. Anything else happening?
Well, a lot. Someone responds to that Twitter, to the poll saying, this is King Tantalus. He says, we will watch and do nothing. We will see, hear, and speak nothing. A few sad, rehearsed voices from crisis actors, and it's yesterday's news. Justice will come, but not from where we expect. And then the playing field will be level for the first time ever, and the cowards will hide.
Well, I've got no idea what time it is, or whether I've got any more callers to take, because I've lost touch with the base. We do have a legend, Erebos. on line one to close this show. Erebos, welcome, as always.
Greetings and salutations to Clan Galloway in Minsk. You know, I hope you met the big leader there, the big guy, the big chap, you know, as I call him.
He is a great leader. He is a big chap, and we very definitely would love to interview him. If he's watching, please, Your Excellency, we have asked to interview you, and if you hear this, I do hope you will respond positively.
Yes, absolutely. Shout out to Jaya the Magnificent, first of her name, the MOATS staff, the MOATS family, the wonderful Clan Galloway. Just a few points, and of course, the lady Gayatri. You know, I'm glad she's looking better and feeling better. You know, school teachers marmalade. You know, excellent. I learned a lot. I come to depend on her segments. You know, ever since her magnum opus with Sykes-Picot, I've been learning a lot, especially about these hidden corners of the world that are kept away from us. Indonesia and places like that, they deserve a light. I've learned quite a lot. So more power to our elbow on that one. Just a few quick points, you know, before we march to the finish line. Trinidad, you know, they have the unfortunate situation of what I mentioned prior, of having flag and document independence, but they don't have real independence, right? Because now they've just become a port, and their own fishermen are being murdered, right? And this is a commentary on many who are still in the third world, you know, as far as the mentality, not the designation, but the mentality of wanting to be colonial subjects, right? This is the results of it. They don't have no sovereignty, no independence whatsoever. They can't even go into their last great leader was Eric Williams, who you might have heard of. He wrote great books on colonialism, and he was able to be friends with everybody. He was friends with the Queen. He was friends with Castro. He was friends with Mao. He met everyone. How is he able to do that? And they can't do that anymore. Anyway, but you know, I hope the people of Trinidad finally figure it out, other than just partying and gossiping. I know a lot about that community, so I can say that. On to Putin and Orban. And I have to say, I'm going to sound petty when I say this, but I'll take pride in that pettiness. I did feel a sense of schadenfreude, the way Trump just dragged both of them, especially Putin, because he knows better, right? He's the creme de la creme of the KGB. And the same thing happened with Merkel. He develops an emotional attachment to these people and not realizing they hate you because you're Russian, right? They don't care about you personally. They hate you because of what you represent. Russia, the unconquerable Russia. That's why they hate you. You're just somebody in lieu of them being able to break up Russia, which they won't be able to do. You know, and Putin, and Orban, who stuck his neck out for Trump, you know, the whole time they were dogging him. You know, Trump didn't just throw him under the bus. Trump was driving. You know, he looked up and he saw Trump glaring down at him on the driver's side as the wheels, you know, ran him over on the ramparts. And, you know, both of them, you know, Putin has the good sense to be quiet about still trading with the Zionist terrorist occupation colony that I call ZTOC. But Orban, you know, he has his chest out like a fighter cock, like one of those fighter chickens, strutting and strident with Netanyahu. I don't have empathy for people like that, right? I mean, I understand that he's pro-European and he's trying to preserve Europe and the sovereignty of Europe, but all of that is gone. But as people, they can't claim to be morally better than anyone. So I did take a good laugh at them personally, not the people of Romania and the people of the Ruski, you know, but them two personally, they deserve it, and they have it coming, and now they're upset, right? The things that, if me, you know, a black guy at the bottom of the socioeconomic pole in New York State could figure it out, you know, using my own two brain cells to rub together, how come these leaders that go back decades can't put it together? So yeah, they had it coming. Let's call the whole thing off. Let's call the whole thing off. And one final thing about something Sarah Wilkinson said. They treated her like she was on Rikers Island. And I've been to Rikers Island several times. A colony is the last penal colony of the United States of America. And, you know, there was this thing, right, in 1998 when I was incarcerated. New York State had this rule where they wanted to do DNA testing, but this is how they did it. They said, we're only going to focus on the rapists and child molesters. And everybody, even myself at the time, I was cheering, yeah, that's good, focus on them. And then an internal publication came out called the Deuce Club to highlight the people who've been in prison. They give you 5 years, 10 years, 40 years later, so they just kept giving you deuces, 2 years at a time. And they pointed out something I never forgot. They said it's going to start with them, with the people you hate, the people that you despise. But then everybody's going to be tested. Everybody's going to be raked in to a database. And that's what they do. They did it to Alex Jones, even Trump himself on social media. People cheered, and, you know, with their pom-poms, and now it came for them. It came full circle because the establishment only cares about the establishment. Thank you for the time. More power to most. Love, peace, and hair grease.
Wow. Well, for another tour de force. The people have no excuse now that the truth is only a touch of a way on your computer, on your phone. The good Reverend, who was eventually cast to the Hitlerite concentration camp, put it best. Firstly, for the communists, and I was not a communist, so I'd protest. Then they came socialists, they came for the trade unionists, and I was neither. I did not. Then they came for the Jews, I was not a Jew, and I did not protest, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to protest. A brilliant call, a brilliant show. I hope you agree. We are in Minsk, where the agreements that were never meant to be implemented were signed. And the rest, I'm afraid, is now bloody history, and it isn't finished yet. It's been marvelous for us. I hope it was for you, and if it was, join us again on Wednesday, when we might actually still be in Minsk.
Yeah, actually, yes.
We will still be in Minsk.
So any questions on Minsk?
Any questions
let us know.
about Minsk, let us know. It's been great. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.